Kira Kim is an international board certified lactation consultant in private practice serving families in Massachusetts. She holds a bachelor's degree in sociology and public health, is a clinical herbalist, and is studied out of hospital based midwifery care. In addition to providing in home lactation care, she teaches prenatal lactation for parents, lactation basics for doulas and midwives, and has run a small group for female identifying individuals on the topic of emotional blocks to sexual satisfaction. Whether she's helping new families navigate the early days, helping a nursing duo define their own success, or teaching birth workers and parents, she's passionate about connecting with other people and encouraging them to spread their knowledge to others. She firmly believes in the importance of alone time, and you can find her riding her bike, playing her piano, or perusing antique shops for mid century modern furniture. She lives by the beach with her husband, their four rambunctious, adorable kids, and an old lazy cat. Welcome to Literally Nothing Matters, Kira.
Hello, that was lovely. Thank you.
I'm excited to have you.
So excited.
I do live by the beach with my rambunctious children.
Oh, they're so perfect. I've only seen pictures, but
they're really cute. They're really cute.
How old are your children?
7, 9, 11, and 13. So
oh my gosh.
Everybody's wiping their own butt in my house. It's beautiful.
Well, that's happy.
It's success. Yes. I've made it.
Something right.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So I've known Kira for over a year now because I had you come in my house when I had Annie, and back in my postpartum era, and I'm going to be in it again. And when I met Kira, she is just this energetic force. She is such a kind individual, so dynamic. And everyone that I asked about this topic of lactation, they were like, the goddess herself, Kira Kim. And she has been, you just know everything about boobs. You were like, I am the boob lady.
I am the boob lady.
You really saved, like, I don't think people understand how important lactation is in those postpartum days. It can like tear you apart, and you are such a beacon. So I just wanted to kind of start by talking about your role as a lactation specialist, and further than that, a support person, because that's really what you are, in the postpartum era. Like, how did you get here? What do you often see when you come in the home during those times? And just kind of start with your journey.
So I've been doing this for, my oldest kid's 13. So I've been in this kind of circle for 13 years. And I got started like a lot of my colleagues because I had a really bad first nursing relationship. I had a really traumatic first birth, and it turned into a horrible nursing relationship. And the whole early postpartum period was just a wreck. I was like, didn't pay attention to the C-section section in the birthing class because like that wasn't going to be a thing. Like, did my bottles, like didn't worry about figuring out my pump. Like, I was like that person that I tell people not to be. It comes from background history, and everything that could go off the rails really did. And it was especially difficult for me. I'm very type A. I have like the lifetime overachiever, which we have to talk about what I'm doing next with my life at some point, Caitlin. Overachieving again. So it was a blow, like a big fat blow to my sense of self, basically, that I couldn't do this thing that was so natural that, it just wasn't working. So when my first kid was 9 months old, we moved overseas to China. And the only English-speaking people that I could find was a Lactation group 2 hours away by train in Shanghai. And I was like, well, I'm nursing a kid and they speak English, so I'm there. Like, I'm going to go. Nursing was fine for us by this point because he was 9 months old. And it was lovely to just have other people and to talk, and things just started falling into place. I did peer-to-peer stuff there, got deep into midwifery and Chinese herbalism, and the rest is, as they say, kind of history. So that's how I ended up where I am.
Yeah. It's so cool. Funny because as you're talking, I'm already feeling even more healed as I do when you talk, because I don't even know your whole story of all of your four children's
like,
birth. I think there's so much healing and just hearing other people's birth stories. And so just knowing that, do you feel like when you go in other people's houses, you see kind of the same thing, but everyone's kind of hiding behind the curtain of like everyone's feeling these things.
Oh yeah.
And like, what do you see?
I mean, the thing that I love to see, and it sounds backwards, so you have to follow me a little bit. It's like, why would you want to see somebody miserable? But like, I love it when people open the door and they like are rocking the like parent bun on the top of the head, and like there's milk leaking, the baby's friggin' screaming in the background, and they're just like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I'm such a mess. I'm like, no, you're exactly where you're supposed to be.
Yep.
I'm like, I like a house that's not spotless. That means that you're just trying to take care of yourself. Like the dishes are going to be there, whether you do them now or do them later, or hopefully have someone else do them for you. Please sit down. You know, that feeling of overwhelm. And the feeling overwhelm is pretty prevalent in my practice. People aren't calling because they want to have a cup of tea and a good time. People are calling because things are off the rails a little bit or a lot. My practice motto is feed the baby, save the sanity. So I'm never pushy about like, this has to be exclusive nursing. And it's always like, where are you today? Like at this moment, you know, be real with me. I bring up my stories so people know that I'm not the militant, like you must nurse at all cost. And also I'm not just a talking head that's like, oh, well, what does she know about how difficult it is? I'm like, oh, I know. I have the mastitis and the C-sections, and then I have the home births and the breech births. And like, I've run the gamut on all of it, but I really do find that people are relieved when they hear like, oh, this person who does this for a living had a hard time. Even after I became an IBCLC, like I still had a hard time. I was like, it's my own kid. I don't know what I'm doing. That feeling of like, okay, I am safe to not be perfect right now I love that part of my job. It's not a job. I love it. I love that part of connecting with people to just be like, no, it sucks. Like it really does. Sometimes it's okay. You can say that out loud. Like, I'm not going to tell you to enjoy every minute or
Yeah,
to
I think
sleep.
people need to hear that.
Yeah. Sleep when the baby sleeps. Enjoy every minute. I'm like, yeah, you know, this minute where they're pooping on you and screaming in your ear is not enjoyable.
Yeah.
And that's okay. So yeah, that's what I get a lot of, really overwhelmed people. Yeah.
I also love that
Hard.
you mentioned like, okay, let's just get the baby fed. Like,
Yeah.
let's find a
Yeah.
solution.
Feed the baby. Yeah.
Because my older sister just had her first in a very crazy whirlwind of an experience that we don't need to get into. But I texted her before this and kind of asked about her experience with the lactation specialist at the hospital.
Oh boy.
And she had a really hard time because so basically she had her baby 2 months early. So she wasn't ready, like her body wasn't ready to nurse. And she felt like the lactation consultants were only there to help with the nursing. Like she had to figure out how to pump and how to like do all that other stuff, like through Instagram and TikTok. Like they just wouldn't help her with that. So that was something that like I wanted to ask you about too. Like, oh, is that even an option? Like, I think people also automatically think like, oh, well, they're only just going to help me breastfeed. But
yeah. Yeah. And we get a bad rap and we deserve it. Like we really, really do.
I think hospitals are hard because it's like a business, right? Like they're just pumping you out of there.
Me personally, like I'm in private practice, right? But like I have worked hospital based and it sucks to be inpatient where you have like Caitlin, you know how long sessions last, right? Like you have 12 minutes if you're lucky with this freshly postpartum person who had a baby like 4 hours ago and don't even know what day it is or what their middle name is. Like you literally ask them their date of birth and they're like, can you just look at my wristband? Like I don't even know. It's hard, right? Like you don't have the time to give individualized care. In private practice, it's different, but like I'm there to help you feed your kid, like period, however that looks. When I walk in the door, you have milk. So you're in the right place. Whether you want to keep having milk and you want to feed it to your baby or you want to chuck it out the window and quit, that's fine. Like I can go either way, somewhere in the middle. And that knowledge that it doesn't have to be everything or nothing is something that is not talked about. It's either you succeeded or you failed at breastfeeding. And I hate that. Like it's gross. And my profession kind of pushes that, and it's gross and I hate it. Like there's no failure in taking care of yourself and feeding your kid. Like, please find me the failure in that.
Right.
I mean, unless you're feeding the baby Five Guys or something, then we might have a problem. But like,
for sure. So you said that you've worked in hospitals before. And so obviously, like you were saying, those sessions are so fast. And like, maybe this question is even silly because the women that you're working with are so out of it and tired and have just been through like everything. But do you have any advice on like how people can advocate for themselves more in those scenarios?
Yeah. I mean, and it sounds like a plug for business, but listen to me. I'm packed and I'm taking a month off in October, so don't call me. Don't call me right now. The best piece of advice I can give to anybody is have a prenatal session with an IBCLC. You don't know what you don't know, and the people that you're with don't have the time or resources to tell you that. Also, if you're strictly hospital-based and you've never worked private practice, you see people for the first 4 days, period. Everything changes after that. So their knowledge base of like what it looks like when people go home is so off base because they don't have that experience. So if you can talk to someone beforehand that can prep you, I do virtual prenatals with people and give them care plans. Like, these are your red flags. This is what you need to look for. You have me on the patient portal, so you can go on at 2 a.m. and be like, this hurts, what do I do, right? Having a person is helpful. If you cannot have a person, bug your nurses. All the nurses are going to punch me in the face. Bug your nurses and just be like, I'm latching again and it still hurts. Like, help me make this not be painful. It's hard for them to get to you, but that's what they're there for. And you're on your own, 4 days postpartum, if you're lucky, quote, quote, to be kicked out of the hospital with your newborn.
Sent right out into the world.
Right out. I remember my husband, when we left the hospital with my first, he looked at me and he was like, this has got to be illegal. Like, they like, just
who is
like, let us walk out with him.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah. We're like, how do we hold him? I remember
like,
right after
oh my God.
The birth with Annie, Chad, there's a picture of Chad just like with his 2 fingers, not actually touching Annie. And the nurses were like, you're allowed to touch her.
He's like, oh God, she's going to break. Yeah.
Like, I don't think so yet.
Yep.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. You just don't know what you don't know. And lactation is just one of those avenues that it sounds so simple, It's like you're feeding your kid. It is not.
It is
because that's what people say. It's natural. It's beautiful. Don't worry about it.
No, it is. So much.
People say that to me a lot. Like, it's natural. It's supposed to be natural. I'm like, think about your first kiss. That was also natural, like first sexual experience, or like, a lot of these natural first. I'm lucky, like, my first kiss was pretty good. It wasn't bad. First sexual experience. It was actually really, really, really good. I'm the most extremely lucky person ever. It's like, I'm very lucky. He was my literal best friend, and we were like teenagers experimenting in a safe space.
Oh my God, that's adorable.
I want that.
Highly recommend.
I want that for my kids when they're of that age. It's beautiful. But like, the average person doesn't have that experience. Like, it's awkward. It's fumbly. It's not like the movies. Like, birth and nursing is also the same way. Natural does not mean straightforward. Natural is like the opposite of straightforward all the time. So yeah, we get spoon-fed this like Mother Madonna image where you're gonna like, have a crown and just put the baby on the breast and everything's gonna be lovely and there's gonna be unicorns, and it's like, it's
and
not.
The birds will help you get dressed after.
You sing and it's lovely. And in reality, like, you're bleeding and crying and milking and the baby's crapping on you at the same time. It's like, that's what it really looks like.
So on top of all of these different aspects of lactation, when you came in my house, and I did have a couple different situations where I had like clogged milk ducts, which is a super common thing, and you recommended a certain herb to me. So I wanted to kind of go into that realm that you had mentioned. You got into Chinese herbalism.
Yeah.
So just curious, what kind of like herbs do you recommend, just kind of to new moms or to the general public? Is there something that we should all be kind of like looking out for other than just the prenatal that they're just telling us to take?
Yeah. Well, starting with your prenatal, I'll start with your prenatal. And the one thing I will say is herbs are medicine, so it's always like person specific, right? When it comes to prenatals, I always do tell people, if you can find something that has folate in it instead of folic acid, or a folic B vitamin from a food source. Generally, it's better absorbed, but we also have a really rampant gene mutation in our population that causes midline defects like tongue ties, which is a hot topic. And
what is a tongue tie, really quick?
Yeah, we're gonna get in that. So a tongue tie.
We don't have to talk about it now.
No, I'll do it quickly. An actual tongue tie is or oral restriction, because it can be your tongue, your lip, your cheeks, like everything can be all tied up. When you lift your tongue up, when we are in utero, our tongues are completely and utterly tied to the floor of our mouths. Palates are really high, roof of your mouth is really high, tongue is smashed on down. As we grow in the uterus, that starts to recede back so that the tip of the tongue has movement and it recedes back all the way. And then you're supposed to have range of motion. For a lot of us, it doesn't recede back all the way. So we have something that looks like a rubber band. I always say it's a rubber band under the tongue. That doesn't make it a tie. It's if that rubber band is tight enough, broad enough, thick enough to impact the way that the tongue functions, then it's a tie. This is why we can't diagnose ties over pictures on Facebook. It's not what it looks like. It's how it functions. If someone lifts up a tongue and says like, oh yeah, there's no tongue tie, or oh, the baby can stick his tongue out, he's fine, run. Like that's not a functional assessment. I don't care what it looks like. I care how it functions. So part of the increase in ties is that we know what we're looking for now. So now we can assess properly. So more kids are going to get the diagnosis, but also this gene mutation can be part of it. And of course, genetics is you have a gene mutated person. With a gene mutated person, you have a higher chance of a gene mutated kid. So as time goes on, we're just going to end up being more tied and more tied. So folate is something that from a midwifery standpoint that I do say to people, you can try to get folate or food-based prenatal. It's great. For herbs, super specific to the person always. If I can say anything about herbalism in like one sentence, it's that herbs are medicine, period. End stop. They're no different from Advil. They're no different from, like start going up the line. We have our Advils and our Tylenols, and then we have things that are a little stronger, and then we're getting to the big stuff. Like herbs can be anywhere from like your Advil to like your big stuff. I have herbs in my apothecary at home that can kill you if you take them incorrectly. They're medicine. It's potpourri.
I feel like people don't realize that.
Oh,
because
yeah. So they go on
everyone
Facebook.
Should have this.
Yeah. They go on Facebook and they're like, what should I take? And they're like, you should take this. And you really, really shouldn't just take this, whatever it is. And I guess my quick example of an herb that gets tossed around, fenugreek, was very popular for years. I remember like in 2012, when I was about to have my second kid, people were really getting on the fenugreek train. Like everybody took it till they smelled like maple syrup. It increases your milk supply, blah, blah, blah. And I remember I was going through Herbalism, Southwest School of Botanical Med is what I did my herbalism training. And I remember reading the properties of how fenugreek worked and thinking to myself, I don't think this is going to be great for every person. I was like, a little green and trying to figure out like, why wouldn't this be great? But like, I just don't feel like this is a one size fits all herb based on how it works in the body. And as I went along in my training and then had more patients, I was like, oh, people with autoimmune disorders, people with systemic inflammation, and people with thyroid disease should not take fenugreek. Period. Please don't take fenugreek. It can tank your supply. So if you're on Facebook and people are like, I took fenugreek, there will always be that one person that's like, I took fenugreek and it screwed everything up. And I'm like, check your thyroid.
Yeah.
like, I don't have a thyroid. Yeah, I don't have a thyroid problem. Like, yeah, I do now. Like,
yeah, like
now
do.
Yeah, this is how some people in my practice find out that they have a thyroid issue. It's because they take fenugreek because someone on Facebook told them to, and it screws everything up. Yeah. I'm like, we can work on that, but you definitely need to get your thyroid checked. So it's not one size fits all. For me, in my clinical practice, I'm an herbalist. Reproductive endocrinology is my jam. I used to do a lot of fertility awareness training, fertility awareness consults for people working with herbs to help people get pregnant or not get pregnant, or resolve pregnancies. We'll put it that way. So it's my jam. I love endocrinology. I love herbs, but we always work on the basics first. Nursing appropriately, a good latch, good drainage. Then we get into herbs. It's rare I actually have to bring them out. A couple of times a week, maybe I'll be like, let's do an herbal consult. But Yeah. Oh, herbs are medicine.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
Facebook.
good to know.
Interesting. I love that stuff.
Facebook.
I know.
Facebook.
And it's the groups that you get into when you're in like postpartum and
Yeah.
prenatal and all those things, because you're like, oh, I'll just hop on this Facebook group,
That'll
because
be
you kind of
great.
like go back and forth with people. And yeah,
Yeah.
people just recommend these random things, and it's like, oh, it
It's
doesn't work for
great.
everyone.
Like,
Yeah.
especially during the pandemic, it was great that people had a place to connect. But we as Americans, like my dad was in the Navy and I was an expat. So I'm well-traveled in general. I've been everywhere. And we're really not a nomad type of society. We're individual nomads. Like we take our own little families and we move places. We don't move as groups. So we just don't have that support around us, which is sad, but it also means we don't realize that Facebook is just what moms and parents have had forever, except for it used to be in person with like your auntie giving you dumb advice about crap. And you're like, okay, thanks. Like, I'll keep that in mind, or I'm glad that worked for you. Now you just have it online.
Yeah, and that was like the mom influencers
Oh,
taking over the world.
so glad my youngest kid is 7 and I missed that.
Yeah.
I missed all of that. I'm really grateful that I
It
missed
is
the whole
wild.
Insta.
You see like a day in the life of a new mom, and you're like,
Man,
oh, I haven't showered for a week.
I wish that I could have done a day in the life like when I was on my my third kid, where my 4-year-old he's on the spectrum, so 4 was hard, and then a like naked 2-year-old, and then like a 6-month-old that's biting my nipple, and like I'm answering the FedEx guy with my boob out of my shirt. Like that's the day in the life. Like I drop breast milk and cry like somebody murdered my cat or something. Like that's real postpartum.
Yes. Yes.
But that's the
Like
content that
productivity
people
out
need
of the
to
window.
see.
That's what they
Yes.
need. Like you just snapping over something completely and utterly irrelevant. Like, do you want cream in your coffee? No.
Yeah.
Like, why would you ask me
You
that?
can't make one more decision.
Yes.
Leave me alone.
Oh, the mental
Yeah.
load is real.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it is. The guilt and the mental load. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So I had mentioned kind of in your intro when we kind of talked a teeny bit about how this isn't offered right now, but at one point you were running a small group for individuals talking about like emotional blocks and sexual satisfaction.
Yeah.
So what did that look like? What did you offer? What topics were you seeing a lot of women kind of like reaching out to you about, which I would assume probably they're still trying to make you do?
Yes, we are.
But like, what are we all going through that people aren't saying, and what advice were you giving?
When I became a mom and started hanging out with other people, like I'm an introvert, funny enough. Like you'd never guess
No,
it.
you're
I am dead serious, Caitlin. I go on vacation by myself 4 days every 6 months because I can't friggin' handle talking to anybody anymore. I just got back from Chicago last month. I lock myself in like a freezing cold air conditioned room and eat like room order steak and literally don't even text my own family. Like I cannot.
That sounds like an ideal vacation.
It's a dream. People are like, what do you do? Do you go to the beach? I was like, hell no, I don't. I like sit in an air conditioned room and like watch smutty TV and do not hear mom for 4 days. It's like, it's brilliant. But I am like a hardcore introvert. And in high school, all of my friends were actually male because I'm very straightforward and I don't have time for nonsense. And high school, high school's high school. Yeah. And I was on cheer and was around plenty of girls, but they were like my cheer girls and not the vibe that worked for me. So my friends were guys. And then I became a mom and I started hanging out with women a lot because we were all expats and we hung out. And the topic of orgasm would come up randomly. And I was like, what do y'all mean you're not getting orgasms? Like occasionally not, or like not? And I don't know how many times I've heard people say, I've never had one before. I'm like with someone else, or like never had one. They're like, no, never had one. Or more frequently, like never had one with my spouse, and they'd be embarrassed by that, because people get into this thing where they fake it. Just like, if anybody's listening, please don't fake it. Don't fake it.
No. Because
you're not doing yourself any favors.
No one's winning there.
You're centering the other person in the situation by making them feel like they're doing something good, but you're lying to them and you're not having fun. Like stop faking. Don't do it. One thing that I noticed when we were talking about this, it was really just this perpetual notion that like women just don't orgasm. Like it's really, really hard for them to. It's hard. It's really hard. It inherently, like physiologically, is not difficult if you know what you're doing and you know like how to approach things. So my class was really about getting to the root of my kid's asking me if he can use a stapler. Yes, sweetheart, you're fine. Just don't staple your finger. That's not
Right in
those
the
four
middle.
things that I told you not to talk to me about. I love them. I love them. It's
They're
better than
First.
Right
it's
in the middle of
better-
our orgasm conversation.
It's
Come
better-
on in, babe.
Yeah, I know. Like the best part about it is these are my kids. So they're like
They're like,
used to this
okay,
nonsense.
mom, again.
Like it's dinner conflab at our house. It's like we talk about
Yes.
placentas, we talk about like
I love that.
labia stitches and periods and
Yep.
crap
But
like
also,
that.
that's a good thing, I think.
Yeah.
It's so normal to them. that
They'll
they're
know
like, okay.
things.
They know.
Chad just
So-
started when he like when he changes Annie. I'm like trying to make him say like vagina or vulva,
Yeah,
like when she
vulva.
like grabs herself and he's
like,
so
it's so
uncomfortable about
foreign.
it. But I'm like, use the
It's
word vulva.
important.
Don't say your privates. Don't do that. And
Yeah.
so he's been saying vulva, and I'm like,
Oh my
it's so
God.
funny because I'm in the other room like chuckling and because
Chuckling about
so
it.
uncomfortable.
He's
But
so
I'm like,
uncomfortable.
we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna make her feel like bad about her parts. But go
You
ahead.
can tell him that one of my kids, we jokingly say that their punk group should be vulva spank because when they were little, they used to run around naked and just like smack themselves all the time. So like that's where we are with the word vulva in our house.
I
That's
love
amazing.
that. We're
But
getting
really,
there.
people really have a lot of blocks about what they should be doing in bed. And I call it the cosmopolitan era. Like those of us that were born in the late 70s, the 80s, and the very early 90s about like how to please your man in bed was every frigging, I think cosmopolitan is still how to please your man in bed. I'm like,
Probably.
really? Like we're really still doing this 30 years later. And we got ingrained that like sex was really supposed to be about pleasing your partner and not about your own pleasure really at all. And if you did get pleasure, like, yay, that's a bonus. But like, it's kind of supposed to be the point itself. Like, you're not here for fun. So a lot of the blocks that we really worked through in our class was really just about breaking down those stereotypes and how we've ingrained them broadly, like how we've ingrained that we are the nurturers, we are the caretakers, we are the micromanagers, we are the mental load, like we have to take care of everybody first all the time. And then if we get taken care of in the end, we should be really, really thankful for that. And I'm here to be like, nah, no, this is one point in my life. I have 4 kids, an extremely busy practice. I have a nonprofit. This is one point in my life where I'm going to come first, literally, figuratively. Like me, I'm going number 1. So I loved the class. It was 4 to 6 sessions, just breaking down these barriers first mentally, and then working on the physiology of like where an orgasm comes from and how what we hear does not work for everybody. Like, no, the G-spot doesn't work for everybody, okay? Like, stop trying to like rub the little thing on the inside. Stop.
Right.
It doesn't work for you. Do something else. So it was a lot of like self-exploratory type of stuff that we chatted about. And I miss it a lot. And I get asked at least a couple times every other month, like, hey, remember when you used to do that class? I was like, I know, we must talk about the clitoris again. Yes.
Yep.
One day. But I love it. I love having people get in tune with themselves overall. Yeah, it's good.
I feel like when I think about that type of thing, when I think about like my own journey into like sex and all of that, there's so much of it that is mental, and is so just like emotional. And then you put pregnancy on top of it. And I feel like sex during pregnancy is just during the whole realm of pregnancy. It's different at every week, honestly. Sometimes you're like totally into it, sometimes you're not. Different ways you want to like explore and all of that. That's not talked enough.
Oh God, no. No.
So there's all of that, but I do think that like throughout my whole lifetime, that's a huge thing of like it's an emotional journey as well as a physical one. And I feel super curious about that, of like what resources, because a lot of the times I feel like when you think about these things, people are like, well, just meditate, like ground yourself, all of those things.
I have ADHD. I cannot meditate. I literally have ADHD. I can't meditate.
glad you said that
I'm
because
distracted.
I'm like, can someone else tell me that they cannot meditate because it's not for me.
Cannot. I fall
I
asleep
can't.
every time, or I'm just like, ugh, whatever.
Right?
I have ADHD, like actual ADHD, and I cannot meditate because my brain works too fast. It's like get up and do something. I'm like, okay, this is useless. I'm just driving myself nuts. But
What
yeah.
do you do to like put yourself in your body?
That's a hard one. I think now it's become so ingrained in me that I don't actually have to really think about it. Like I know myself, and this is also with birth as well, because midwifery and birthing, like really getting deep into yourself, your feeling, your centering of yourself, where you are, how you feel is huge. I think giving birth, if you're fortunate enough to have that experience where you can have the type of birth where you can ground yourself all the way down and really like give birth, not just in a physiologically like straightforward way, but from a place of empowerment, like it tends to make your sexual life better because you can dig into that. It's what people call the sacred feminine, but I don't like the whole feminine masculine thing. So I just say it's like you're centered. It's just yourself, you know.
Yeah.
For me, I being an introvert with ADHD is probably helpful to center myself because sometimes I just have to block everything out because it's too much. So I can be like, just like not going to pay attention. We talk a lot about like finding one thing to pay attention to, like one sensation, or like one part of your body, not even sexual part of your body, that you can just pay attention to how that feels. Like, how does this touch feel? Is this light? Is this tingly? Like, does this make you catch your breath? Do you not like that? Just paying like deep attention to one thing will help the other things start to like dissipate. Really, it's hard. It's hard. We're taught to multitask all the time.
Yes, and we're forced to multitask all the time.
Forced to multitask. You're multitasking during sex. You're like, yeah, I'm doing it. I'm like, oh my God, hold on. Do I look good? Are my boobs bouncing the right way? Like, this is what we're ingrained to think about.
Angle?
Like,
wait, I have to put this on the grocery list. Like,
I have to brush this. Like, yeah, it never freaking stops.
Well, and I feel like there's all the layers, like you were just saying, of we're taught to be self-conscious about so many things. And the beauty standards and all of that. But then we're supposed to just be able to like, woo, take it all off and like jump around and have everything jiggle. Like, no.
Yeah, no. Only if it
hopefully you're with
perfectly.
a partner that makes you feel like you can, but like,
and that's a big part. Yeah.
That's a big part.
It's
but a lot of it is within.
And it's within. And like Caitlin knows this about me, like when it comes to nursing as well, and my job, it's all about centering the person, centering the parent first. You cannot pour from an empty cup is like the thing, you really, really can't. People are like, I'm not going to be able to bond if I can't nurse. I'm like, no, you're not bonding. You're trauma bonding right now. You're both crying. You're miserable. Like, what do you inherently want if the world wasn't telling you that you were a failure, quote unquote, or you were a bad mom, or you quit? I hate these words. Like, they're terrible. Like, what would you want as a human being? And it's just kind of my philosophy, like the orgasm class, the nursing, how I raise my kids. Like, who are you as a human being without the world's influence? Like, who are you? That's why I love having kids. It's very cool to watch them grow up. I'm like, who are you? Who are you going to be?
Which is such an interesting question because I feel like we don't slow down enough to really like, what are our core values? Like, who are we?
Who are we?
And it's like, how do I even answer that by like peeling off the layers of what everyone else is doing and telling me, and like health wise, even like what's the best for me? What's the best for my baby? You look at different cultures around the world and everyone's doing different things. And I think that that's so interesting too.
It is.
Yeah. Wow, man.
Yeah. That's the midlife crisis. I'm almost 40. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. What am I going to do when I grow up? Shit.
I know. I was going to say that too. I'm like, I think that a lot of this just comes with age too.
I'm adulty.
Yeah.
I'm an adult. Help.
I know.
Yeah. And I feel like it also is like, hi, let's normalize that like you're going to be a lot of different things when you grow up.
I tell my kids this every day when it comes to like you as a person, you are a different person all the time. And then I talk about this with people with their marriages and with new families. Like, you are now a new human being. Like, you are a parent, and now you are a different, if you're married or you're partnered up, like your relationship is different. Like, you have become different people overnight. in marriage, I've been with my husband for 20 years. So I've been married forever. It's gross. I still like him. This iteration of him, right? Because we were children, for Christ's sake. We were like 19 years old when we got together. Like, we are different people all the time. It's a choice to love this new iteration of this person. It's hard as hell.
Do
and
you have any advice
for
on
loving each iteration? Oh man.
Or just marriage advice in general?
Man, the person you marry, so this is what I'm telling my kids. If you want to get married or partner up, people's core values are what you're trying to link yourself up with. What they do, what their life goals are, what they do for work, how much money they make, or like these types of things. This can all change like overnight. From tragic reasons to just everyday reasons, or, you know, like life shifts and changes. And if you at your core are still having the same connection, a lot of the whirlwind is just not going to feel as ungrounding, if that's a word, right? We've definitely been through a lot, my husband and I. I met him in high school and we've been best friends forever. And I am definitely not the same 19-year-old, and he, thank Christ, is not either. But like at our core, like we still have the same values. We value ourselves and people in the same way, and know that it's going to change. And you might not like the version of them that they are for a while, really. And that is really hard. That's why a lot of people at first, they don't like this version right now. It's like, can you work through this version, or is this the version that's sticking around? Because if it really is and you can't cop it, that's fine. Peace. But people change. People change a lot. I like that guy. I'm like going to totally go make out with him after this for a few minutes, probably.
Love that. Making out after 20 years. That's
so cute.
Cool.
I still think he's freaking cute, and he still thinks I'm cute. It's disgusting. My parents
How
were
do you
married
keep
forever.
that giddiness after having 4 kids and going through those stages? Like, is it getting through the stages where you're like, I'm never going to make out with you again, get away from me?
It's, you know, we keep our humor. I have very sarcastic, dry humor. My dad was a sailor, literally in the Navy for 24 years. 24 years in the military. Yep. And my mom is from New Zealand, so it's like F-bomb central, like growing up, and just very like, my mom's very dry all the time. Like, we joke, we make fun of ourselves. We make fun of our children a lot. we joke about like the toddler phases can be so horrible because they just scream about like everything and they don't make sense. And like, it's so easy to feel defeated and frustrated and disrespected and angry and overwhelmed because toddlers are like, they're a whole thing. It's so much better when you can just like laugh about it. Like, we still laugh about, our youngest kid used to say, I don't like it, I don't want to, whenever she didn't want to do something. And we quote it. I'll be like, did you put the mortgage on auto pay? They'll be like, I don't like it. Like, I don't want to. We just have to we have to joke about it. The child who used to say that is giving me quite a look right now.
She knows.
It's okay. I love that I can say that and that you gave me that, because it's such a yes. That's Evelyn.
What a love.
Go. Go, tiny bum.
Hi.
She's nuts. But yeah, humor is so entirely key. And realizing that I'm lucky I get to be in people's houses all the time. My husband does not. He is work from home, insular type of investment software type of stuff, doesn't people a lot. And I have a great perspective where I'm like, oh no, honey, everyone's falling apart. Everyone. Every single person, everyone has their crap. They have their in-law stories. They have their crazy sisters that live in New York or whatever. Everybody has their stuff. We're doing fine.
Yep.
We're doing fine.
It's so true.
It's so hard.
Yeah,
God, I don't like adulting. I don't want to.
You're doing it. I don't know. Maybe we can all just live in child dreams or something.
Yeah, I know. Just be kids, run around.
Seriously.
I love it.
No, we just all need to schedule these solo vacations.
Yep, the freezing cold rooms where you just order the steak that someone brings to you on a platter. It's a slice of heaven.
Yeah, I'm gonna copy this.
Kira, I feel like people are gonna be booking with you and they're not going to be pregnant or lactating. They're just gonna be
can we talk about life?
Chat for a little?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
I'll tell you that you're not nuts. I promise. You're not insane. We're all in the same place. Really, we're all drowning.
Oh my
hard.
God.
It's
All right.
hard.
Well, I think we hit everything. Mandy, did you
think
have
so.
anything else you wanted to ask?
No, that was awesome.
I'm
Oh
so
my
glad I got to
goodness.
chit chat with you guys, and that I
Goodness.
only got one, interruption about a stapler. That's not bad. No one went,
Not at all.
ah!
It
We
was not an
need
No
that.
one-
emergency interruption.
No one broke anything. The cat didn't vomit or something. It's like always the cat wanting to puke when I'm on the phone.
As my dog's back
Yeah.
there, like doing weird things. I don't even know.
Please.
Sticking his butt on the bed or something. I don't know.
It's fine.
I love the face. Your dog's face is like, oh God, they're talking about.
Like, Mom.
Oh my goodness. All right.
love
Well, it has been amazing. Thanks for taking time out. I know you
No
are a busy
problem.
woman.
I am. If you ever want to chat again, though, about anything, I'll always make time for you guys. You know it.
We
Do you
really
is
appreciate
there
that.
somewhere people can reach out to you and your team? Because now I know you have branched out. You have a
Yeah.
whole team now, which is
Well,
fabulous.
I don't. I had a team and then I mentored them and then they went off and did their own things, which is what I wanted them to do. So it worked out. But now I'm like,
Okay.
I am now drowning again. Yeah, I'm at the Boston area lactation connection. So it's the BALC.com. You can find me on Boston IBCLC on Insta. I am not on Insta very often, but like I don't post very often, but I'm on there. So if you see Boston IBCLC, you can always send me a message and I'll send you my email address and that kind of stuff. So, or you might see me around Marblehead sipping around with way too many kids.
I love it. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, thanks so much, Kira. We will
No
I will be
problem.
in touch with you soon.
Please do. I'm looking forward to seeing you and chit chatting.
Oh my gosh.
All
All
right.
right. Have a
Thank
good
care.
Monday. See you later.
Thanks. Take care, guys. Bye.
Bye.